Everyone, I'm Casey Hunt. It's wonderful to have you with us. In just hours, the White House says President Biden will, quote, express his frustrations to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The phone call will mark the first time the two leaders have spoken since the 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers were killed by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. A senior administration official says Biden is increasingly frustrated and angry, but the White House also emphasizing that there's been no shift in U.S. policy supporting Israel's military operation.
No consequences thus far for any types of behavior that the president has been outraged by.
We're having conversations with the Israeli government. We've been very clear about that. Those conversations have been tough. We've been very public about those conversations. On this particular instant, there will be an investigation. There's an investigation currently happening. The president has said he wants it to be swift, he wants it to be comprehensive, and he wants there to see accountability.
All right, our panel is here. David Frum is staff writer for The Atlantic, CNN political commentator, former deputy chief of staff for HUD under Trump. Sir Michael Singleton is here, and CNN political commentator Kate Bedingfield. She, of course, is former communications director for the Biden White House. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Kate, it may be a little easier to be at this table today than communicating at the White House on this issue. A couple of things. One, there's new reporting in the New York Times that Jill Biden is pressing her husband to end the conflict in Gaza. You can see their headline here. And then this also stuck out to me. I woke up to this tweet from late yesterday. This is from Jon Favreau, who of course was a speechwriter in the Obama White House. He says the president doesn't get credit for being privately enraged while he still refuses to use leverage to stop the IDF from killing and starving innocent people. These stories only make him look weak. I can't imagine that's being perceived terribly well among Biden colleagues. It's a little bit of a shot across the bow.
Yeah.
What do you see in this?
Well, I mean, look, this is a protracted and incredibly difficult situation. I think it is complicated. Obviously, the catastrophe with the WCK aid workers, I think, has further inflamed people's passions and anger, understandably. You know, for President Biden, I think he needs to continue to lean into showing personal outrage. I mean, you saw the statement that they put out yesterday. The language was a lot more sort of intense, I think, than Biden's language has been around this in terms of his own personal outrage. He does need to continue to show it. But look, this is an incredibly complicated and challenging situation, and adjusting American weapons assistance to Israel has significant consequences throughout the region. I mean, Israel is our ally, and signaling to those in the region who are not our allies that it's open season is a dangerous thing. It's complicated. So no question, tensions are high, emotions are high. They should be. What we have been witnessing is horrific. It is complicated. But, you know, I think for Biden, ultimately, is there going to have to be some policy adjustment here? I suspect that there probably is. But I think that has to happen in the larger context of what that is going to mean for the United States, what that's going to mean for the region. And even though it's hard in the moment, I don't think that can happen purely as an emotional reaction, even to an incredibly horrific thing like we saw earlier this week.
Yeah. David Frum, let me show you a little bit of what Jose Andres spoke to the media yesterday. He had a phone call with Biden on Tuesday. And of course, he's talked in very personal terms about these 7 people who were killed. In one instance, saying he wishes he hadn't even founded World Central Kitchen, because if he hadn't, then this person that he cared so much about would still be here today. Here he was getting emotional in an interview yesterday.
But defending your people is not killing everybody else around. I've been in Gaza myself. I met, and some of the people that died were my friends, and I served with them. Somi is the nicest angel you will ever meet. This was a good soul.
It's just really hard to watch, and I think it's part of what has crystallized this as just potentially a major turning point.
Well, Chef Jose Andres is a noble and compassionate man, and World Central Kitchen does amazing work. And if people are looking for a charity to support that does work all over the world, you can't do better than World Central Kitchen. Israel faces an enemy that uses ambulances to move terrorists. Many of the people kidnapped on October 7th who have emerged have reported being transported in ambulances. Israel faces an enemy that has recruited international organizations as allies in all but name. At least a dozen UN employees were actively involved in the October 7th attack. Hundreds are complicit. Thousands of families in Gaza that are terrorist families, that have a terrorist as a breadwinner, are employed by the United Nations. And so Israel faces a problem where the enemy also has obligations to respect the laws of war. It has obligations not to use hospitals as headquarters, but it does. It has obligations not to use ambulances to move its troops or to move kidnapped people, but it does. So in this very treacherous environment against this unscrupulous enemy, people are trying to prevent friendly fire incidents to protect Israel's own troops. Israel's going to make mistakes from time to time, and this one looks like an absolutely harrowing one. It's really important for people as they consume the news fast to remember how many of the stories we've heard since October 7th have turned out to be very different from what you first hear. You hear that Israel bombed a hospital and that hundreds are dead. Well, then it turns out it was a Hamas rocket that fell on the hospital, and not hundreds, but dozens are dead. You hear stories that the UN denies that any of its employees were working for Hamas. Well, maybe one or two. Okay, maybe a dozen. Okay, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of families. So this is a harrowing situation. It's a terrible war, and it achieves nothing, and the only way out is for Hamas to be defeated and to go away. And if Hamas had never done this thing on October 7th, then all the people, Palestinian, Israeli, and the heroic workers for World Central Kitchen, they would all be alive.
Sure, Michael. One aspect of this, of course, is the U.S.'s ability to influence Benjamin Netanyahu, who has honestly played in U.S. Politics. Some would argue he's waiting for potentially Donald Trump to get reelected. What does the waning influence that the U.S. seems to have right now? I'm gonna hang this on David Sanger, who said this yesterday on our show, that the U.S. government seems to have less impact right now in terms of getting Netanyahu to do what they want than they did at the beginning of the conflict. How is that going to impact what happens next year?
Well, I think it's substantial, as most Americans want to continue to support Israel. I think there should be substantial pressure on Hamas to release the hostages. We're not hearing enough of that from the administration, in my opinion.
Well, they have been working behind the scenes on that.
They have, but we're hearing and seeing reports about the president being frustrated, about the first lady being frustrated, and I completely understand that. I think most Americans want to preserve the life of innocent Palestinians. We should want that, but we should also desire complete defeat of Hamas, which wants the annihilation of the Jewish state, which is why Benjamin Netanyahu is relentless in wanting to destroy them. I would love to see President Biden behind the scenes also showcasing frustration about that. We're not seeing it. You know, I have Jewish friends, many of them in this country, that have reached out to me and have said, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of my kids on college campuses. I'm afraid when I'm going out in public if someone may attack me because of my faith. I would love to see the president speak out more forthright about that as well, and he's not doing it. So in terms of the politics,
If we give Kate a brief word on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that that's fair. I think the president has been very direct about the rise of anti-Semitism. I mean, remember, this was actually a motivating reason for him to run in 2019, was what we saw in Charlottesville. And he speaks about the dangers of rising anti-Semitism all the time. He also, I think, has been incredibly aggressive in trying to pursue an end to this conflict that brings the hostages home and that degrades Hamas. I mean, that is in part why he's facing some of this political backlash, because the sort of easier thing to do would be to say, you know, no, we're not going to keep doing the hard work behind closed doors that's required in a situation like this. We're going to put forward a strategy that's entirely intended to be public, and would be easier from a press perspective, from a communications perspective. But at the end of the day, that would not get to the ultimate outcome that the president wants, that I think everybody wants, is, you know, to see Hamas defeated, to see the hostages released, and to put in place a post-conflict plan that provides some path forward in the region.
What is
Very quick last word.
What is that plan? There appears to be a capitulation from the president. We saw what happened in Michigan. We saw what just recently happened in Wisconsin. I think he's more concerned about the electoral impact and what's really going on in that part of the world.
When you have people on the left who are publicly criticizing the president for not doing enough to distance himself from Israel, I'm not sure that
criticism is a part of the job.
Sure that really makes
it's a part of the job, and I don't want to see the president. I don't want to see the president.
Face of what Biden
but I don't want to see the president adopt some of the more radical, progressive positions on this particular issue by posturing to that leftist base. I don't think he should.
Let's just say that we are kind of in this moment where the president is saying one thing about his personal feelings, But he still has a policy that is supporting Israel to the hilt.
Yes.
And that is something that is what progressives are focused on here. All right, up next.